Hey everyone, it's Blair here at Time Trades. Thanks for joining me this weekend. Okay, so we've got lots of interesting stuff to cover and an interesting new discovery and lots of credit to give to others on Twitter. But I want to start by taking advantage of this framework that we introduced last week. Okay, so this involves starting with price because price is most important. Price is how we get paid. So we're going to analyze price first, and then we're going to drop down into some of the timing context, the broader weekly level trends that are underway. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with the daily forecasts that are generated from time trades to get a little bit more precision around our forecasting. Okay, so let's start with Bitcoin. We're going to cover both Bitcoin and we're going to cover the Nasdaq using this format. So we're going to start in TradingView, and we're going to put these two up side by side. Okay, so we've got Bitcoin on the left in a daily interval, and we've got the Nasdaq futures on the right again in a daily interval. So one of the things that I've discovered in the past couple of weeks that's an excellent way to analyze price, and I learned this from my friend Joe on Twitter, who's on Twitter as Market Occultations. I'll drop a link in the description. But Joe makes a lot of use of anchored VWAPs. And the cool thing about anchored VWAPs is that they encode volume information. And as such, they can be a good rough proxy for sort of order flow and that type of information. So when we take a look at Bitcoin on the left here, we can see there's five anchored VWAPs, and I've anchored these at different places during the green period, roughly every 2 weeks apart. But the important thing isn't where do you anchor the VWAPs. The important thing is really that you do take advantage of this powerful tool. They can behave a little bit like multiple exponential moving averages. Because some of the older VWAPs will move slower than some of the newer ones. But I do like it because it does encode that volume information. So what do we see when we take a look at this? Well, we've got 5 different anchored VWAPs on the screen right now for Bitcoin, and prices beneath all 5 of them. And the last anchored VWAP, the oldest one, starts September 29th. Okay, so everyone that is basically purchased on average since September 29th is underwater when you adjust for both price and volume. So this is not a bullish configuration. This is definitely a bearish configuration for price relative to those most recent VWAPs. So let's take a look at the Nasdaq futures, what's happening over here. So in Nasdaq futures, again, in this case, we've got 4 VWAPs anchored, again, roughly every 2 weeks, but you can anchor them at prices that make sense for you. And we can see here how price has recently sliced through the 2 most recent VWAPs and is approaching. I wouldn't be surprised if it touches and bounces off of the second oldest VWAP here at around 15,870, and then we've got longer term support at 15,577. Okay, so this is certainly a very bearish day on Friday. Big red candle, big angry red candle. The question is really, where's it going to stop? I see 2 main resistance areas, support areas that can provide support based on these VWAPs. So in the process of pulling this together, I had both the Nasdaq and Bitcoin up side by side, and I made an interesting discovery I want to share with you. So if we go and take a look at dates here, okay, so September 29th, Bitcoin really kind of kicked off. September 29th, September 30th, Bitcoin kind of kicked off its most recent bull run. And when did the Nasdaq kick off its bull run? Well, let's drag the mouse over and we can see it probably started around, October 13th, 14th. So that's roughly 2 weeks later. Okay. So what happened on the top? Well, we can see the big strong bar into the top was around November 8th on Bitcoin. And when was the big strong bar into the top on the Nasdaq? Well, it was Monday the 22nd. Okay, so from November 8th to Monday the 22nd is another 14 days in difference. So both of these key periods that mark the beginning and the ending of that most recent bull run are about 2 weeks apart. So what this is telling me is that if this relationship holds, there's going to be roughly a 2-week head start, or Bitcoin is roughly 2 weeks ahead of the Nasdaq in terms of its trend. Okay, so what does that tell us right now? Okay, so we're at November 28th right now, and Bitcoin is down here in the low 54s. Okay, so what was happening 2 weeks ago in Bitcoin? Okay, so we're November 28th. Let's move back to November 14th. Okay, so we were roughly around here in Bitcoin. Okay, so what this means is that we've sort of had this first move down in the Qs, right? So if we look at equivalent moves, if we take this Bitcoin move down here, okay, from like November 9th down to November 12th, right, and then translate that into Nasdaq dates, okay, so November 9th plus 14 days is November 13th. So let's go over to the Nasdaq, okay. Sorry, November 9th plus 14 is 23, duh. So here we are, November 22nd, November 23rd, right? So we've had just that first move down here. So this little swoosh down in Bitcoin from 68 to 62 roughly maps to this little swoosh down. It's not little, from 16,754 down to the low 16s. Will probably end in the high 15s when it's done. Okay, but looking ahead, we've still got bigger moves down, right? Because Bitcoin, starting on November 15th, went from basically 65 to 57, and 65 to 55 if you count the wick lower on the 19th. So this big move down in Bitcoin starting November 15th, if we translate that into Nasdaq days by adding 14 days, 15 plus 14 is 29. Okay, so that could mean the start of a much bigger move down around the 29th, 30th, around here. Okay, all of this assumes that relationship continues to hold, but I wanted to point that out because it is a very interesting relationship between the two, and it's maybe it's something that can guide our forecast going forward. Okay, so that's price analysis. In short, Bitcoin, very bearish configuration underneath all VWAPs, and Nasdaq has sliced through the two most recent VWAPs, and there's a couple more that can provide some potential support. So let's go and look at context. Okay, so within the world of context, we've got really kind of three main items that we can use to give us the broader landscape of price behavior: cheat code time periods, short-term waves, and Gann waves. So let's stay in trading view here, and we'll look at cheat code time periods. These are the green and purple boxes. And purple boxes in general tend to be a little bit more corrective, and there's less trending moves in purple. So let's just see if that that observation is accurate. When we go back in time, we can see here in Bitcoin, certainly it felt like big moves at the time back in June, because price was bouncing around from 30 to 40. But, notice the fact that, hey, it was bouncing here, right? I mean, it started at 41, it made a low at 31, it bounced back up to 41. I don't mean to say that purple periods are boring. They're not. They're just, they're not trending. Okay. So this is a period where, if you're trading these periods, you need to take profits quickly. You need to expect reversals any day. Okay. Let's go back to the Nasdaq and see what was going on with the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq tends to trend a little bit more than Bitcoin during these time periods. But commonly we will see a major reversal about halfway through, right? And we see that in both Nasdaq and Bitcoin, major reversal about halfway through purple. And right now we're about halfway through purple. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of a reversal here to come up, and that would be consistent with what purple tends to do. I'm also going to drop a link to the cheat code script in the video comments, so you can download it yourself and draw your own conclusions. I don't want to tell you what to think. I think it's important that everyone does their own analysis and does their own research. Okay, so that is it for the cheat code time period analysis. Let's go into time trades, and we can take a look here at what is going on with the other two contextual tools that we use. Okay, so we're in Bitcoin, and GAN waves are the green and yellow stripes. So I've got GAN waves turned on, or sorry, not green and yellow, blue and yellow stripes. So I've got GAN waves turned on. I've also got short-term waves turned on. So I haven't talked much about short-term waves. These are the blue and yellow line, swoopy lines that I've got. So again, these are based on natural cycles within the inner solar system. So what we found is we've selected these cycles that tend to have the most impact on price. And what I haven't talked a lot about short-term waves, which is the light blue and dark blue and yellow lines, because they've kind of been in a stable configuration for the last few weeks. But coming up, we've got a change in that. No, the signals in the short-term waves tend to be when they cross the zero line, that's the horizontal white line here, and also when they make a local low or a local high. Okay, so we've got a changing context coming up in these short-term waves. The other thing we see here is the recent relationship and behavior within the GAN waves, which is the yellow and blue stripes, has changed. So it used to be that we could expect a pretty good pump at the end of yellow, right? So if we go back to August, we saw a strong pump in yellow. September, strong pump in yellow. Late September, pretty solid pump starting in yellow here. But then the last two yellow periods, October and November, there's been weaker pumps and basically no pumps. So what's happening is very much a change in the overall context. The relationships that used to hold are no longer holding. So something is happening to change that. Okay, it doesn't matter really what it is. The point is it's changing, and the old behavior is breaking down and new behavior is being established. Okay, so that's really what's important here, and we're also starting to see lows being made in the black period after yellow. Okay, so it used to be that the black period after yellow, especially in October, was super strong. Not anymore. It's certainly a lot weaker. And while we're here on Bitcoin, we can drop into the fine grain daily forecasts and notice that around December 6th, December 8th, there's some forecast lows here that are popping up, and we need to be aware of that. The other thing I do want to point out is that another colleague on Twitter that I follow closely, Marsilio's Market Musings, recently made a very important observation about the behavior of terms, astrological terms. Now, we don't use astrological terms within time trades. It's not because I don't think they're useful, I just haven't got around to implementing them, but astrological terms are the core of Marsilio's method. And based on that, there's a very strong Saturn influence coming up between, I believe the dates, if I remember correctly, are like December 3rd through December 16th. So that is, again, very bearish for the market. And that roughly aligns with the time period that we see here for these pivot lows, okay? And that would affect both Bitcoin and stocks. So if you don't follow Marsilio, I'd encourage you to give him a follow. His work is very complementary to what we do here at Time Trades. Okay, so that's the context of Bitcoin. Let's go over and take a look at the Nasdaq through the same lens. Okay, so we had a big red day Friday. And again, the short-term waves are exactly the same between all stocks, okay? They might look a little wavier here on the NASDAQ because there's only 5 trading days a week instead of 7. So every weekend there's a big, gap that has to be caught up, okay? But again, we use the same method. We take a look at, what happens during the yellow periods, what happens during the blue periods. And when it comes to Gann waves, we can see again, we made a high during yellow, and then we're starting to break down, okay? So this is a very significant change in behavior, okay? The last yellow period here, we made a new high and we kept on making new highs and we were powering straight up. Had a little pause during the blue period here and then had the final push up into a high in yellow. And this is typical. We typically see highs in yellow, right? We saw highs back in June and July and August and September. Late September was a bit of an aberration, likely caused by Mercury being retrograde. And then we reestablished the usual behavior in October and November. But after this pivot high last week, it feels like we're establishing a new trend. Now, in terms of the daily forecast, we've got November 30th being a pivot low. That's Tuesday. So this looks like a good time to close any shorts that you might have on. And as it looks like there's also going to be a strong probability of an up day on the following day, Wednesday, December 1, heading into a pivot high on Thursday, December 2. So again, these are all probabilities. These aren't guarantees, but this is consistent with kind of bear market behavior with big moves down, followed by short and sharp moves up as everyone kind of rushes to buy the dip. The question is, when will the dip be over? And we see a significant change in context here with blue crossing the 0 line, and also the information from Marsilio about the configuration of the astrological terms is also important information going forward. So even though there's, kind of some muted forecasts, except for December 9th, there's generally not a lot of confident forecasts at the daily level from time trades for a downward dip. Everything else seems to be aligning towards that. So meaning that after this pivot high, December 2nd, the probabilities would favor a resumption of the downtrend until probably at least this yellow period here, and could be a little bit later. So who knows what we'll see. This is why we always start with price. So keep your price analysis sharp, stay on the right side of the trend. But the broader context calls for lower prices heading into December. Okay, so that's it for me. I hope you got something valuable from this week's video. Take care, and we'll chat again next week. Bye now.